It was at dawn, on the 25th of April 1915, when Australian and New Zealand Army Corps landed on the Gallipoli Peninsula and met fierce resistance. It was the start of a campaign that lasted 8 months and resulted in some 25,000 Australian casualties, including 8,700 who were killed or died of wounds and disease. The men who served on the Gallipoli Peninsula created a legend, adding the word ANZAC to their vocabulary and creating the notion of the ANZAC spirit. The Australian contribution to the war went far beyond our involvement in the Gallipoli campaign. Australian soldiers fought on battlefields across Europe as well as in the Middle East and Africa. Hundreds of thousands fought in World War I. More than 1,500 were local residents. Although we'll feature only 6 of our local heroes in this video, we dedicate this video to all who took part.
Hector Clayton was the son of John Horatio Clayton, one of Uncle's most prominent residents and founders of the legal firm Clayton, Utes and Company, still one of Sydney's most respected law firms. Hector followed his father into the law profession. However, in August 1914, at the outbreak of war, he left his job as a solicitor to enlist. He was just 20 years old. Hector was sent to Gallipoli and was wounded in action there in May 1915, when he was hit in the knee by a piece of shrapnel from an exploding shell. After he recovered, he was sent to France, where he performed superbly. He was gazetted a captain in 1916, and then in December he was given a field promotion to major.
Carrington Dean, a clerk from Wollongong Road, Arncliffe, enlisted in August 1916, aged 21. He previously tried enlisting in the army but had been rejected because of defective sight. By August 1916, the army was accepting a lot of men it had refused in August 1914, and Carrington's application was accepted. Carrington was first sent to England and then in 1917 to France. He served in the trenches in the Western Front until February 1918, when he was admitted to the hospital suffering from trench fever. Carrington was unable to recover from the disease. He returned to Australia in October 1918 with a diagnosis of post-trench fever debility.
Carrington's younger brother, Uriel, enlisted the year before Carrington, in August 1915. On his enlistment forms, he said he was 18 years of age, even though he was only 17. Uriel joined the 3rd Battalion and was sent to Tel El Kebir in Egypt and then to France. In July 1916, Uriel was wounded in action, being shot in the head and armed. It was a serious wound and he was transferred to the field hospital at Etaples and then to a general hospital in England. After his release from hospital, he went absent without leave on 2 occasions. This was quite common among servicemen struggling to deal with the effects of war. In June 1918, Uriel returned to the field in France, where he rejoined the 3rd Battalion. However, in July 1918, he was admitted to hospital with septicemia in his left hand. He rejoined the battalion again in September 1918 and remained with it until the war ended in November.
Sydney Esdale from Arncliffe enlisted in September 1915 at age 20. He joined the 13th Battalion and was sent to France. On the night of the 29th of August 1916, Private Esdale's battalion were at the Moquet Farms at Posveres. The Australians had been ordered to make a night attack against the German trenches in order to take and hold a new position. Not only was the attack made in the dark, but under the most difficult of conditions. It had been raining and the ground was wet and muddy. Moreover, the Germans were fiercely resisting and subjecting the attacking Australians to heavy shelling. After the battle, Sydney could not be found and he was reported missing. The Army and the Red Cross conducted an investigation that left little doubt as to what had happened. Multiple witnesses attested that Sydney had been hit by a German shell and killed. Private Oliver Olds stated bluntly that the shell had blown Sydney to pieces.
Charles Lester was an electroplater from the House Wyone in Terry Street, Arncliffe. He enlisted in November 1916, aged 23. The Australian War Memorial has in its collection a shell-damaged pocket New Testament and writing wallet belonging to Private Lester. In September 1917, Charles was serving in the trenches in France when an order came to go over the top. Charles was hit by a piece of shrapnel from a high-explosive shell in his breast pocket. The shrapnel would have gone through to his heart, but Charles kept the New Testament inside a writing wallet in his pocket, and it slowed the shrapnel down enough to stop it from seriously injuring him. A year later, Charles was with the 53rd Battalion taking part in the Battle of the Mount St. Quentin. In the early hours of the morning of the 1st of September 1918, Charles' unit were ordered to attack the village of Peronne. Charles went over the top and was killed almost instantly by a bullet to his head. At least 17 men from Terry Street, Arncliffe, the same street Charles lived in, enlisted in the war. Among them were Alfred Davis, William Turner, Harold Watt, and Peter Whaley, as well as Charles Lester, all killed in action. Charles, who was 25 years old at the time of death, was the oldest of all of them.
Frederick Wayne was born in 1888 and grew up at 116 Far Street, Rockdale. In 1903, when Fred was 15, he commenced working for Rockdale Council. By 1914, he had risen to the position of Deputy Town Clerk, the equivalent of today's Assistant General Manager. When war broke out in 1914, most people were optimistic that it would be over in a matter of months. Accordingly, when Fred made the decision to enlist in October 1914, he did not resign from his job at Council. Instead, Fred asked the mayor to hold his job for him until he returned. The mayor was proud to oblige, and Fred was granted a leave of absence from Council. Fred was sent to Gallipoli and was killed on the 1st of May 1915, aged 26. There's a plaque outside the Rockdale Council's chambers dedicated to the memory of Frederick Charles Wayne, and Wayne's Crescent, opposite the town hall, was named in his honour.
A World War I patriotic procession took place in Rockdale. These photographs were taken from Bay Street looking north towards the Rockdale Town Hall. In 1915, when these photographs were taken, the Princes Highway was called Rocky Point Road. Rockdale Town Hall and the Grand Hotel were the same locations as today, however, they were different buildings. The top of the original Rockdale Town Hall building can just be seen at the far right of the photographs. Since World War I, there have been wars and conflicts that Australia has been involved in. It's because of those heroes that we enjoy what we have today.
The last post gave one last warning to any soldiers still at large that it was time to retire for the evening. The last post is incorporated into funeral and memorial services as a final farewell and symbolises that the duty of the dead is over and that they can rest in peace.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget.
This has been an RCC News production and is copyright. RCC News is produced by the City Media and Events Unit. Gordana Griaska speaking.